Greetings, friends and fellow daemons, and welcome to Daimonosophy. I'm thinking of the concept of the pre-soul, or sometimes this is called pre-existence. And this is the question: do I have an existence prior to my birth in the planetary body? It's very common to think of the soul or the spirit or some essence within me that can separate from that planetary body and live beyond it, extending into the future. It is not as common that our attention is directed towards the past and the question of where we have come from, or perhaps how we have originated and came to exist here in this planetary body. Modern church Christianity has come to, ironically, about the same place as materialist science in regard to this question that everything begins somewhere around the moment of conception and physical birth. Most church Christian teachings, and there's far too many to number specifics on this, point to that moment of conception is the time at which a soul is created or comes into being within a human being, or the potential for a soul or awareness. Material science, for the most part, denies the existence of a soul, but certainly points to the fact that an individual life begins sometime between conception and birth. I always found it interesting that there's this argument, in order to preserve the practice of abortion, preserve or extend and spread the practice of abortion, there's this argument that takes place about where life begins in the pre-birth development stage. To me, I just always to say that a fetus is not alive after a month, but it is after 3 months or whatever they say, is really sort of a moot conversation, because, well, it would be, even if that's true, it would be alive after 3 months, if allowed to. So it's just a strange conversation to have that only exists in our modern world. But what I want to talk about today is an existence that happens, that occurs, that is there even before conception, even before one particular sperm made it into one particular ovum, that you had an existence before this, a soul before this. Modern church Christianity might reject the idea of a pre-soul, and I believe they officially did at some point in one of those early councils. They officially rejected it. But if you go back far enough, teachers like Origen and the early Desert Fathers, like Maximus the Confessor, talked about the idea of a pre-soul, an existence before birth into the planetary body. Now, of course, this also exists in Buddhism, Hinduism, Eastern thought, in the form of reincarnation. Now, you come back and come back and come back. But that's a little bit different than the idea of the pre-soul as you see it from the early Christian teachers. So, of course, you go back far enough and you get to Zoroastrianism and the idea of the Fravashi. And the idea here is that you have a fine and perfect existence as a pre-soul with no real immediate imperative to be born into a planetary body. But there, as you sit in the cosmic womb, so to speak, happy and enjoying the bliss of the Father Ahura Mazda, the principle of consciousness and wisdom, eventually you become aware of injustice that's occurring in the next world over, so to speak. In other words, in the planetary world, there's an injustice there, there's a threat, there's a danger there. And what this is the echoes of the angry mind, angramanyo, of mechanicalism and hatred and unconsciousness and ignorance occurring there. And you are motivated by a desire to fight against that evil, in one sense, to help ease the suffering of the Father. And so you are inspired and you make a conscious, willful decision to be born into a planetary body in order to carry out that fight. So why don't we recall that as we come into this world? Well, I think it's very possible that we do, in a sense, recall that, at least within our feelings and our higher awareness, not so much in the apparent mind. It's that idea is there at a very early age, at a youthful age, and that this is associated with the what would you say, the childlike approach to the world, the childlike love and amazement and pleasure taken from existence that we have as babies and infants and children, but then of course which gets sort of beaten out of us through the process of indoctrination into society through institutions like public school and other practices. The book Saharasia enumerates quite a bit of these practices, which at some point we'll probably need to take a deep dive on that book on this show, because it's a pretty important part of all of this. Nevertheless, that idea is there, that there is a pre-existence, that there is a pre-soul. Now, even if modern church Christianity rejected the idea still endures in the form of the fallen angels. For even at that angelic level, because clearly within Zoroastrianism, that's what that Fravashi pre-soul represents, is what became in latter teachings, or in latter mythologies, became understood as the angel. And that the angel in order to become fully, a fully conscious individual, must go through a process of descent, of descending into matter, of descending into the planetary realm. It's not just for the purpose of easing the suffering of the Creator, but also for the process of complete individuation and full supersubstantiation. The higher being must descend into this realm and then go through this process of remembering that previous existence in relation to the material world and in relation to the work of easing the suffering of the Father. In other words, they happen at the same time. And for some reason, it's hard for us to wrap our brain around that. We want to think that they're completely separate and these things are against each other, that to ease the suffering of the Father means a complete capitulation and yoking and subservience to a higher command, and that on the other side, work on myself and self-improvement. Totally separate things. They cannot occur at the same time. One can only be done at the expense of the other. I can only ease the suffering of the Father by forgetting about myself and my individual existence. Or on the other hand, I can only work on and exalt my individual existence by disregarding and forgetting about all that nonsense about easing the suffering of the Father. What this teaching indicates is that they work together at the same time and they feed each other. So you have to consider that most of the ideas or ideologies which place these things as opposites are really the form of propaganda. Again, this is why it does not exist in church Christianity, because church Christianity was developed in order to control the masses, in order to gear them up for being productive, being ready to, we got a lot of wars we need to fight. We've got a lot of wealthy elites that want to eat well and indulge in life's niceties at the expense of something else. So that's the first thing that I want you to understand, is that these two things are not separate. They work together in harmony. This also ties in with the concept of Mott, concept of Asha, the idea that my process of individuation, my effort toward supersubstantiation, works in harmony with the needs to maintain this cosmic order, right? That's why there's an ascending current and a descending current. They work together and both are needed. The pre-soul was also an idea with the ancient Greeks and is explicitly discussed by Plato. Plato discussed the idea of consciousness extending infinitely into the past and infinitely into the future. However, has fallen as a result of existence in this world, fallen into the cave, and that's where Plato's cave allegory takes over from there. And quite likely this is one of the things that it's the influence of the Persians and Pythagoras that eventually influenced Plato in this direction. He probably got it from Socrates, who knows. So why is this question important? Why does it matter if there's a pre-soul? Is it necessary to believe it for some reason? Well, it's one of those things that it doesn't matter so much if you believe it or not. What matters is that you reflect upon the model. You reflect upon the idea of it. Chew on it. Ponder it. And the reason it is good is because it instills personal responsibility. And while we may think, oh, yeah, I have personal responsibility, I'm totally down with personal responsibility. The thing is personal irresponsibility, dependence, is fostered in us, at a very deep level. This is part of that indoctrination that we receive throughout life from public school and other sources. It fosters in us dependence. It destroys the feature of personal responsibility. And therefore it's not simply a matter of deciding to go back. Oh, deciding is good. Making decisions is good. But as we often find in life, it's not enough. People make decisions to say, quit drinking or quit smoking or quit using swear words or quit being an asshole. And they find themselves going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So deciding is not enough. We need to reflect on these ideas, and we need to find a way to incarnate the ideas, to transubstantiate the ideas. In other words, to bring the idea from existence purely as a thought in the head into the body, into the physical existence, the material existence, into our feeling, and into our sense of being. And that's a long process beyond the scope of a video, but in taking the idea and taking it as a point of reflection, consuming it, digesting it, it can become a form of nourishment for a new growth that comes from within. Nourishment for a new body that grows from within. When seen in this light, the fallen angel myth, or the pattern of the fallen angel, or what in the past I've called Luciferian Exodus, is the best thing that you can do to help save the universe. It's literally true. You can save yourself and you can save the universe at the same time. You can save yourself and you can save the universe in the same movement, in the same breath. All you need to do is make that effort to keep the dark fires burning.